Was it all an op? There's this blockbuster piece in Israel's Ynet this week. It's written by Nahum Barnea and Ronan Bergman. They say that Israel's spy services began planning to topple Iran's regime 4 years ago. I'm Borzu Deragahi, host of the Badlands podcast and writer of the newsletter Badlands. You can subscribe at Borzou, borzou.substack.com. I'm also on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify, as well as YouTube. So the plan by Benjamin Netanyahu and the Mossad was to kill Iran's leaders, spark a popular uprising, and back an armed Kurdish insurgency in the country's west. According to the report, Israel's plans relied heavily on influence operations inside the country meant to overthrow the regime with mass protests as well as armed guerrilla warfare. The piece said that Israel was heavily involved in the January uprising that provided the humanitarian fig leaf for the U.S.-Israeli war. Needless to say, the scheme totally failed. Iran's hardliners have reemerged stronger than ever, and Iran is arguably more powerful than it's ever been. Nations around the world are now negotiating with Tehran to get access to the Strait of Hormuz. What emerges are immense intelligence failures, arrogance, and a lack of proper analytical understanding of Iran in the run-up to the war, and these problems continue to hamper efforts to secure a peace. I recently was a guest on Algeria's 24-hour news channel where I discussed how these strategic failures brought us to this point. Listen or watch, and please subscribe.
With us is Mr. Borzu Deragahi. He's a Middle East analyst and the founder of the widely read Substack Badlands. He has spent his career covering the region's power dynamics from the ground up. Hello there, Mr. Borzu Deragahi, and thank you for agreeing to be with us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Borzu Deragahi, the Foreign Policy Research Institute and the Small Walls Journal have both actually published critical analysis concluding that this war was premised or was started on dangerously optimistic assumptions about Iranian fragility. John Mearsheimer actually has gone further, declaring that Iran has emerged as the clear victor. So, given this growing consensus, Mr. Deragahi, was the American and Israeli pre-war assumption that bombing alone could collapse the regime not just a tactical miscalculation, but a catastrophic and deliberate intelligence failure designed to sell a war sold on behalf of a foreign power? How do you see it?
Well, I don't think there was any miscalculation on the part of Israel. I think it knew what it was doing. It knows the Iranian regime. It knew that this was not going to topple the Iranian regime. It started last year with the 12-day war. And once that was in place, once the Israelis managed to convince the U.S. to cross the Rubicon, as it were, and bomb Iran for the first time in history, that was the line that needed to be crossed, and it was just a matter of triggering another war. I will say that intelligence assessments were correct. I think that, people in the CIA and the Defense Intelligence Agency and the U.S. State Department, as well as Israeli intelligence, they know full well what Iran is. They know a lot about how the system operates, but they weren't listened to. They were completely ignored. There was a complete short-circuiting of the interagency decision-making process in the U.S., the checks and balances that go into foreign policy making. This was completely ignored. Donald Trump went with his gut. He went with what Benjamin Netanyahu told him about how easy it would be. I think Netanyahu didn't think that it would be so easy. I think that Mossad knows Iran as well. And if you listen to the smart Israeli analysts on social media, they have a very good understanding of Iran. Donald Trump was seduced and duped into triggering this war, and now he's in a trap. And the ultimate kind of end of that trap may very likely be a ground invasion of some sort. May very likely be an even greater catastrophe, because Donald Trump is not a person of any humility. He lacks any kind of understanding. He's a narcissist. completely temperamentally unsuited to lead a country, maybe even lead a company. I mean, he was a con artist more than a businessman, if you look at his career. And so I think that this is basically in a situation where, as your previous guest rightly pointed out, there are not a lot of good choices for Trump. And it appears that escalation is the direction that we're heading. The Iranians are ready for that. The problem is escalation may destroy Iran, but it's not going to open the Strait of Hormuz, and it's not going to get that nuclear material out of Iran.
Is any mainstream Western media actually questioning this symmetry?
I think it's starting to. You hear, for example, through Canada's premier at the Davos summit this year, he touched on some of those ideas. But look, I mean, I think a broader issue is that democracy itself, sadly, is getting a bad name because of the West's current tolerance for and indulgence in genocidal imperialism. I don't know how else to phrase it, but it's the violence that's the problem. And what is happening is that the people of the global South, people across the world, are turning more towards countries like Russia and China and other autocracies and autocratic models as as something to aspire to, and discrediting and basically rejecting democracy, because the West has given democracy a bad name in a way because of its violence, especially in the Middle East and the Arab world. And this is becoming a real way that the world is being shaped right now. You see what is kind of extraordinary, and you see it in the diplomatic developments in the weekend from reports and leaks and so on. It's like Russia and China and a few other countries in the world, including Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Egypt, these autocracies coming to the aid of the world, basically, trying to prevent the global economy from being destroyed by a war waged by the leader of the free world and the only democracy in the Middle East, with the acquiescence of the Western democracies, including much of Western Europe, including especially Germany, with the chancellor there essentially bootlicking Donald Trump every chance he gets, and a NATO leader in Mark Rutte, which, although not participating in the war, keeps flattering Trump and keeps enabling his dysfunctional behavior, as well as that of official Washington.
As an endgame scenario, Mr. Borzo Doraghi, the small wars journal's deeply pessimistic assessment is that this conflict presents no favorable exit, and that in either scenario the United States loses. Foreign Affairs has meticulously documented the strategic incoherence where the US wants a deal while Israel pursues regime change. Now, 80 or let's say 59 days in this war with no clear mission accomplished. Can you outline the most likely endgame scenario?
I mean, that's really hard. That's a really hard thing to outline at this point. I think that there will probably be, unfortunately, another military and kinetic escalation at some point. There's just too much tension built up and too much intransigence on the part of both the Iranians and the Americans. There is I would put it at like 60% chance that the war would spark again, because once that Rubicon was crossed, once the U.S. began attacking Iran, that was one big threshold. And then once Iran figured out that, wow, we don't really need a nuclear weapon to scare our enemies, we can just close the Strait of Hormuz and basically take the entire global economy hostage. That was a new thing. And that is really the great defeat for the United States. That the fact that this hypothesis that Iran could close the Strait of Hormuz proved to be a brilliant one, that it could, in fact, and it could, in a sense, bring the United States to its knees. Now, the next question is, does Iran have the capacity to inflict the harm that it says it will inflict once the U.S. launches those attacks? And I think the assessments that I've seen and the information that I've seen and the reporting that I've done as a journalist shows that in fact it does. At least Iran is at least able to hold out until September if there is some kind of resumption of kinetic action. And even if there is, and this is the really hard part to swallow, even if the U.S. bombs Iran back into the Stone Age, as it has threatened to do, there's no guarantee that that will actually accomplish any of America's goals, including the opening of the Strait of Hormuz or the recovery of that nuclear material that is buried beneath a mountain somewhere in central Iran.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening in to my podcast, Badlands, or zoo.substack.com is where you can find me. Please subscribe, hit the like button if you're watching on YouTube. Thank you so much.